Thank you, Jackie. Right, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gents, for tonight's meeting on the Licensing Committee, Thursday, 20th of January. Is there any apologies?
I've not received any.
Okay. Any late items to introduce by the Chair? No, I have nothing on that.
Chair, may I just speak on the late items, please?
Yes, go on, Councillor Pegg.
Thank you very much, Chair. All I'd like to just know is, shouldn't the committee have an update on tonight's agenda about the COVID impact on bars and restaurants, as well as the outcome of any COVID secure checks that are carried out on taxis and takeaways? Considering, the circumstances we're all in, I thought it might be nice to have an update, if that's possible.
Councillor Atwell, if I can just address Councillor Pegg on that. It's Lucy from Legal Services. Hello.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes, of course you can carry on, Lucy.
No,
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Yes, Councillor Pegg, that's not an item that's actually on the agenda tonight, and I think that sort of information would probably take some time for licensing to compile. So it may be worth you just dropping an email to the licensing department, and they can provide you with that information.
Yes, that's fine. It would also be nice if the whole committee could be updated regularly, if that could be possible.
I know that Mrs. Rawson and Mr. Kay are here tonight, so they may be able to address further on that point. It may be something which we can deal with after the meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, minutes of the last meeting held on the 5th of November 2020. Can we move as printed?
Chair, I understand Councillor Hudson wants to ask a question.
Sorry, one at a time, please. Go on. Sorry, Councillor Hudson, go on.
Good evening, everyone. Item 6, 4.4 at the last meeting on 5th of November said we would get some kind of update on the implementation of those government recommendations. Do we have any idea when that's going to happen? Because I was expecting it at this meeting.
Michael, can I come back to you on that one?
Yes, you can, Chair. Let me just start my video so you can see me. Yeah, we haven't got an update for this committee. It is something that Mrs. Rawson is working on. So we would hope to. I don't know whether or not Angela wants to come in. It's certainly something that we are still working on, but we've not got a timeline for coming back to you as yet.
Thank you.
That's right, Chair. I'm looking to do a brief update at the next meeting, which I believe is at the March meeting.
Yeah.
Right, thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Angela. Item number 4, minutes of the meeting held on November the 20th. Can we move as printed? Everybody happy with that?
Yeah, I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Thank you, Councillor Sandhu. Right, on to taxi licence fees and change 2020 and 22. Over to you, Andy.
I'm going to take that one, Chair. And,
thank you.
This is a report that is put before the committee most years, and it's to look forward at the fees and charges that we would like to propose for the next financial year. Now, as you can see, this report provides the information on the proposed fees and any changes that we wanted to make to the driver, the vehicle, operator licences and any other sundry items. Those sundry items can be anything from making a duplicate licence or changing information that's held onto our system. As I've said, the fees and charges are reviewed annually, and it's worth remembering that these licensing functions are self-funding. They're non-profit making, and that means that it must be set at a level to recover the total costs incurred of providing the service. So obviously then there is no cost to the corporate purse. We do keep separate accounts for each types of licenses, and that's for financial purposes. So we keep separate accounts for the hackney drivers, the carriage vehicles, the private hire drivers, private hire operators and private hire vehicles. And then we can see, because each different type of application may take a slightly different process to deal with, which is why you get variations in the fees themselves. We get the detailed information from the finance team, and we do a calculation of the time spent on each activity so that we can use that information, that direct information, for the assessment. 3-year budgets are set using historical knowledge. As we know, drivers have 3-year licences, and we make year-end adjustments so that everything balances out to the correct amount. The proposed licence fees and charges for the next financial year are all listed out in Appendix 1 for you. Now, whilst the cost of providing the service has definitely increased, there's been an increase in staff resourcing, there's been an increase in buying sundries, there's been an increase in various items, but we are pleased to say that we have made some savings over the last financial year. And so what we want to do this year is use those savings to support the drivers and operators, because we know and appreciate that they've been having a really difficult time at the moment. And so the proposal is not to increase the fees for the next financial year. So hopefully that will be a bit of a support to the business at this time. In previous years and in any subsequent year, the council is required to publish the fees in a local newspaper. Now, I know we're not changing the fees, but we still have to make the information public. The public are then allowed to make a representation to those fees if they so wish, whether they have any queries or concerns. And where a representation is made and not withdrawn, the council has to consider it. In the event of this, we would usually bring that back to the next scheduled meeting of the licensing committee, which, with it being March, we have plenty of time before the 1st of April effective date. That basically is the outline of this report. So the recommendations from that chair are for the committee to approve the proposed licence fees and charges for the year 21-22 as set out in the appendix, and to approve those effective from the 1st of April 21. To also request the Service Director of Public Protection and Street Pride to advertise those proposed fees, and to delegate the Service Director of Public Protection and Street Pride, in consultation with the Chair, to consider any representations that do come in. That way, those representations can be considered and mediated where possible. And as I've said, any outstanding ones would come back before the licensing committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Angela. Anybody got any questions or comments?
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Sandhu.
Thank you. I would like to say congratulations to licensing team, because they kept the same fee charge like last year's, but I wish we could reduce it. But still, I would like to say thank you. We have increased it because we save some money, but hopefully the next year we keep same. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I'll just reiterate that. I think thank to Angela Rawson and the team to come back to tell us that we made some savings, and obviously it's not going to affect the drivers in the long term, especially in the current state we're in, and I think they'll appreciate the fact that it's been frozen, and let's hopefully get them back on the road and get them working for the City of Derby. But yeah, anybody else got any more comments on that or any questions? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Moving on to item 6, general licensing fees and changes 2021. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, can we just actually vote on it?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, can we take a vote on it, please? All those 4?
Yes, 4.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah, all 4.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anybody against?
4.
Anybody against? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much for that. Item number 6, general licensing fees and changes 2021-22. I think that's you, Michael.
Chair.
It is me, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we just did lose you a
Can you
little
now,
bit
yeah? Thank
then. We did just lose you a little bit then, Chair. I think, well, I did. I don't know whether or not it's my end or your end. But
If I can just come in there, Mark. Obviously, before a lot of them came into the meeting, Sarah Baines did mention that there has been IT issues, and there is going to be a bit of an update. So if anybody's dropping in and dropping off, it's not down to us. It's down to the IT that's currently being updated later on tonight, if I'm told correctly. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, yes, thank you, Chair. So, yes, this is a report on the general licensing fees and charges for 2021-22. Each year, the Public Protection Service reviews its fees and charges, and this is to ensure that any additional costs or efficiencies of providing the services are properly reflected in delivering those services, similar to the report that Mrs. Rawson has just provided in terms of taxi licences. The proposed general licensing fees and charges for 2021-22 are contained in the appendices of the report for members' consideration. Appendix 1 sets out the proposed fees for a number of different licences, registrations and permits that the service administers. And these are based on cost recovery and inflationary cost increases. Appendix 2, that sets out the proposed fees chargeable under the Gambling Act legislation. Licence fees, where permitted, are based on cost recovery and inflationary costs increases up to a maximum permitted level. So you'll see there in Appendix 2, there is a column that sort of identifies if there is a maximum permitted level that we can't go above. That's not to say that all of the fees and charges are at that maximum permitted level, because obviously they have to be based on cost recovery initially. I think it's probably worthwhile saying as well in Appendix 2 that some of the fees and charges that are applicable under the Gambling Act are set by statute. And again, in Appendix 2, you will see which of those fees and charges are set by statute. And then finally, Appendix 3, that sets out fees chargeable under the Licensing Act. Now, all of these fees and charges are set in statute and so are just provided for information only. So the recommendations, Chair, are to approve the proposed fees and charges for 2021-22 set out at Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. And then to note the statutory fees and charges made under the Licensing Act, which is set out at Appendix 3. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sir Michael. Anybody got any questions or any comments on item number 6, general licensing fees and changes?
Yes, please, Chair.
Councillor Skelton, over to you.
Thank you. I was just wondering, looking down some of the list of things like, certainly like tattooing and body piercing and stuff like that. Obviously, because we're in lockdown, and obviously even when we weren't in lockdown from this parts of the year, those particular services have not been allowed to operate. Have we seen a drop off in the licenses or giving up of licenses in those sorts of areas at all?
It's a difficult one, that is, because until we have had periods where some of these businesses have been allowed to operate. So I think the general view has been with premises that they want to maintain their license to be able to open up and operate as soon as they can. So initially, I think the answer to the question is no. But obviously, as COVID goes on for longer, we're not going to know some of those that true data on them until probably the more medium term. Yes, we are coming up to a year now. I appreciate that, but there have been periods where some of those businesses have been able to operate. So, they have sort of maintained their licenses for the time being.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else got any questions? No? Okay. Can we have a vote on that, please? Everybody for?
Yes, I'm for.
Yes, four.
Yeah.
Four.
Anybody against? Anybody against recommendations? Okay, that's good. Thank you very much for that. My licensing policy, I think that's over to you, Mrs. Rawson.
It is, yes. Just let me know if it's crackling, because it's I'm getting a couple of little blips on the computer itself. So just give me a nudge if you need me to go over anything again.
No problem.
This report is, as it said, about the new boat and boatman licensing. The matter was last before this committee in November, when the subject of licensing pleasure boats and boatmen who operate them was discussed. As you may recall, we received a request from a company to operate pleasure boats along a stretch of the River Derwent at some point in the future. As previously advised, the permissions enabling the council to issue those licences are contained within the Public Health Acts. Before putting the procedure and practice into place, a council is required to adopt the provisions of that Act, and in November the committee supported referring the request to full council so that that regulation was incorporated into the Constitution. That was approved on the 25th of November last year. So we have actually got power to use that legislation. Since then, a policy has been developed to guide applicants, members, and anyone actually involved in the process as to the requirements of Derby City Council. That policy is attached at appendix number 1 of this report. Basically, the process will consist that there will be an application and a renewal process which will require an applicant proving their competencies in their area, so whether that's the management of the boat or their safety expertise. And what we will be asking is this by way of a relevant qualification. There are several qualifications that do cover this area. We'll also be asking for identity and DBS checks to obviously ensure safeguarding. Both types of licence will have conditions attached to them, and they will obviously undergo further compliance checks to ensure that they are carrying on with the terms and conditions of the licence. Before implementing such a new policy, however, it's always good practice to consult on its content and ensure that as wide a range of people, businesses and stakeholders are involved in a fair and open consultation process. It's therefore proposed that a 4-week consultation period take place, after which, should there be no outstanding objections, the draft document will become policy and applications can begin to be received. Due to the short deadline involved in this matter, it's proposed that any objections are considered without the need for a full committee hearing. This can easily be done by delegating the authority to the licensing manager and head of licensing to discuss any responses and make any necessary changes in consultation with the chair of this committee. Obviously, if there are any matters that are highly contentious, they will of course be referred back to full committee for further consideration. In any event, the committee will receive a progress report at a future meeting. Excuse me. As we move past consultation and begin receiving applications, there are obvious costs involved, as we've been finding out with the previous 2 reports. And as a council, we're obviously able to recover those reasonable costs. An exercise has been carried out to estimate the costs of the administration of this licensing regime, and this has resulted in the proposed charges at 4.7 of this report. I'm therefore asking the committee today to consider the draft boat and boatman policy at Appendix 1 and release the document for a 4-week consultation period, following which the policy will be approved as drafted should there be no objections. Number 2, that the committee delegate the authority to make changes to the draft policy following any minor responses to the consultation, to the Head of Service for Licensing and the Licensing Manager in consultation with the Chair of the Committee. And finally, that the Committee approve the fees as set out in paragraph 4.7 of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rawson. Has anybody got any questions or any comments? Are we all happy with the recommendations that have been put in front of us by Mrs. Rawson?
Chair,
Yeah.
could I speak? It's Paul.
Yes, Councillor Hasselgrave. Yes,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Right, thank you, Angela, for your report. I remember our last full council, Alison, I think, spoke for us all when she talked about our duty as on taxi and licensing being primarily concerned with ensuring the safety of the public and accessibilities to taxis and other vehicles for hire for all our residents and visitors to the city. And given that the council is preparing to allow fee charging boatmen and vessels on the Derwent, I feel that we should be reassured on some points the idea of public safety and accessibility. The issues I'm thinking about is are boatmen and employees, the owner of the craft, people who manage it and the staff, are they going to be trained as taxi drivers are on safeguarding, looking out for exploitation and all the other things that are covered? That's one point. Are the police and the fire and rescue service presently, or will they be, capable of intervening in incidents which are accidental or some kind of antisocial behaviour or even terrorism, I hate to say? Have they got the equipment and the trained power, and is it easily accessible to get to onto the river? And finally, will there be stipulations that require accessibility to vehicles by disabled residents or visitors to the city?
Thank you,
Councillor
Councillor
Atwell, apologies,
Yeah.
Councillor Atwell, I don't know whether or not I can assist at this point, and Mrs. Rawson can correct me
Yeah,
if
of course
I'm
you
incorrect on anything. So Councillor Hazelgrave, thank you for your questions on that. Obviously,
Go ahead.
what that power under the Public Health Amendment Act provides is the power to licence the vessel and also the boat person. Now, obviously, that's just one aspect of it. There's lots of other things like health and safety which are dealt with by other people. So in terms of our powers, in effect, this is what we've got covered. Now, in respect of your points on safeguarding, it's a bit different in effect, the use of a pleasure boat to a taxi, because it's open to more people to be on a vehicle, on that vessel, as opposed to one-to-one sometimes in a taxi. So there was, it was part of the review when looking at policies as to whether or not we felt it was appropriate. And after weighing up the options, it was felt it wasn't necessarily appropriate at this time. But as you'll see in that report, it will be subject to review. This is a whole new area of licensing which we're doing, and it may be that further down the line that could be something that's explored, but at this stage it was looked into, but it was discounted. Moving on to the fire and rescue aspect of it, you'll see within the application process that the vessels and the boatmen have to sign up to the Sound Practice Safe Waters and Inland Waters Small Passenger Boat Code. I'm not sure if any of you had the opportunity to click on that link, but basically that's been put together by professionals in the field for the use of vessels on the waterway. And that does include things like the provision of fire safety equipment on boats and that. So that is actually covered within it. But as I say, in addition to the licensing regime, you do also have health and safety executive and things like that, in which there can be aspects of it in relation to that boat. So in terms of our remit under the legislation, we've tried to be as concise as possible in the report and in the policy, but to also cover as many aspects as we think are applicable to do so. So hopefully that should address your questions you've got there, unless there's anything further. And Mrs. Rawson, unless there's anything further you wish to add in respect of that.
No, that's brilliant, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. It's just the issue of accessibility. Will there be
Sorry, they just broke up there. Do you want to just come back again?
Sorry, the issue of accessibility by disabled residents or visitors, will that be a stipulation they will be able to have access.
So in respect of the actual policy itself, that's not covered within it, but obviously in respect of permission being given to access the water, in other areas of council, those aspects are being dealt with.
Thank you. I think Lucy and Angela, well, particularly Lucy, has reassured me on a number of those points, and it's quite clear that it's been in the thinking of the policy and that it will be dealt with at some time. But I think as a committee, we need to keep an eye on the whole package and we get to know everything that's going on in terms of that, so that we can be reassured that we are doing our primary duty of ensuring the safety of public and visitors.
Thank you, Councillor Asgrave. Next question, Councillor Alison Holmes, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a query. So the boat has to have a... Can everybody hear me? Sorry, I can't see myself on the screen. Sorry. But the boat has to have a licence and the boatman has to have a licence. Two separate things, yes?
Yes.
So does the boatman with the licence have to be on the vessel at all times? So say Mr. Boatman had a licence on his boat and he was ill one day, but he got some passengers booked in, so he asked his son to take the boat out that day. Would the son then have to have a separate licence, or how does it work?
Apologies, Ms. Rawson. Yes, Councillor Holmes, any person that wishes to go out on the water and be responsible for such a vessel would need to have a licence to do so. It wouldn't be the case of just because one person's got a licence, they could then delegate that to someone else, because of the checks which are being made and the qualifications which are needed.
Agreed.
Okay, so it's kind of fair to say then that if somebody comes along with a boat and wants a boat and a boat licence, that there would be possibly more than one person applying for the same boat, but each person who takes the boat out has got to have the licence and all the qualifications that's stated.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's
all, thank you.
Councillor, that is part of the compliance check that will be taking place as well, is to make sure that the correct boatman is in place at the correct time and licensed with us.
So, sorry, just another thought on that then. So presumably there will be ID badges involved, will they, like with identification on, like taxi drivers would wear, like lanyards and things?
There will be a formal licence that they will receive, and we will look at a lanyard, but I'm not sure whether the company may provide those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, is everybody happy for the proposal to go through them?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anybody against?
Chair, should we add that other recommendation that maybe comes out of what I was saying, that the taxi and licensing committee should be kept abreast of the eventual outcome of all work on this issue before people ply the trade on the river?
Can that be added in, Angela?
With the reason we've got a short timescale on the consultation is because and I appreciate it may well not go ahead on time due to certain restrictions, but the company was hoping to start their operation in March, which is why we've asked in the recommendations for any objections to be dealt with outside of the committee. But we could, there is no reason I can put it on my forward plan to come back to the committee with an update at a period.
That's fine. Great. Yeah. If we just put that as a recommendation, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Then the company can start to operate as we ease restrictions, if that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Certainly from my point
of view. That's fine, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I think that just about to conclude tonight's meeting. First of all, can I just say a big thank you to all the officers for putting this report and the recommendations together for us for tonight's committee. Thank you everybody all for attending, and thanks for everybody's contribution. And that's about it. Good night, God bless, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.